By morning, the bowls were outside her door again. 5 of them. Neat. Polite. Waiting. And this time, they were not alone. NORAH VANCE opened the door with flour on her hands and sleep in her eyes. The 5 cubs sat in a line, tails around their paws. Behind them stood 2 handlers, a medic, and a security officer. The grey-striped cub lifted its bowl and gave a hopeful huff. Nora stared. So we're doing this in public now. Selin stepped forward. I sent the message. We didn't know what else to do. Nora glanced down the corridor. Too many people were pretending not to watch. Inside. You 4 and the furry criminals. The smallest cub leaned against her boot. Her quarters were cramped. The handlers hugged the wall. The medic stayed by the door. The officer watched the cubs like he expected fangs. The cubs ignored everyone. They only watched Nora's counter. She had started before dawn, dough under a cloth, butter by the pan, chopped tomatoes, and basil ready. Bowls down. Sit. 5 bowls touched the table together. 5 cubs Saturday. The medic blinked. How are they this calm with you? Because they ate, Selin said. Nora turned. They really haven't been eating. The older handler answered, voice rough. Not properly. Not since transfer. How long? 8 days. The station had kept them alive with fluids and supplements. But they had stopped choosing food. Stopped settling. Nora looked back at the counter. Why? Selin swallowed. We thought stress. New gravity. New handlers. New sounds. They refused paste, then meat, then everything. They sniffed it and cried. Nora poured oil into the pan. Then let's not waste time. Garlic hit hot oil with a warm sizzle. All 5 cubs lifted their heads at once. The room changed. The cubs stopped watching exits and stared at the pan like it was the only safe thing on the station. Nora added butter, tomatoes, basil. The smell filled the room. The smallest cub put both paws on the table and made that soft broken sound again. Selin covered her mouth. They only make that when they feel safe enough to sleep. Then let them. Nora moved fast. Dough, water, sauce, bowls. The officer watched her. Why does this help? Nora shrugged. Because your station smells like metal, bleach, and fear. She served 5 bowls, then split what was left for the handlers. Eat. The cubs waited for permission. Nora pointed. Blow on it. 5 tiny puffs. Then the cubs ate. Soft chuffs. Bowl clinks. The smallest one hugged its bowl again. The grey-striped one kept checking that Nora was still there. Selin cried quietly. The officer took 1 bite and went still. Then every cub froze. Nora heard it a second later, a thin whine in the vent above her sink. The cub's ears flattened. The smallest one pressed against her knee. Nora looked up. Do they react like this in the nursery? Selin nodded. Every night. We thought it was separation distress. Nora dragged over a chair and popped the vent panel loose. Hot metal. Burnt dust. Sterilizer sting. She leaned in and swore. Warped bearing. Oxidation. A sterilizer line bleeding trace fumes. Tiny issue for adults. Nightmare for cubs. Nora dropped down. They're not refusing food. They're refusing the room. The medic frowned. Can that do this much? Nora pointed at the vent. Would you sleep in a screaming machine that smells like a clinic fire? No one answered. The grey-striped cub nudged its empty bowl toward her. Nora looked at the officer. Who signs off on nursery maintenance? Administrator Kelt. Nora laughed once without humor. Of course. By midday, Kepler 9 had 3 problems. The cubs only settled near Nora or her food, the nursery vents were stressing them every night, and Administrator Kelt did not believe a maintenance tech belonged in a diplomatic nursery. Nora stood outside KHLT's office with a repair pad in one hand and grease on the other. Selen stood beside her. Behind them sat the 5 cubs with their bowls. Kelt stepped out, already annoyed. Technician Vance. This is highly irregular. Nora held up the pad. Nursery airline inspection. Priority. Bearing failure, sterilizer leak, acoustic stress trigger. The cubs can hear it and smell it. Kelt glanced at the cubs. Handlers are trained for animal care. You are not. I'm trained to fix broken systems. That nursery is a broken system. You fed them unauthorized food. I fed hungry babies. This is a diplomatic station. Then act like one. Silence hit the corridor. Selen stepped in fast. Please. They ate more in 12 hours than in the last 6 days. Kelt studied them, then said, 1 inspection team. 1 hour. No cooking in the nursery. Nora bit back a worse reply. Fine. But if they panic again, that's on you. The grey-striped cub gave a tiny offended grunt. The nursery looked perfect in the coldest way possible. Soft lights, clean floors, sterile feeders, and under all of it a smell of sharp metal and dry chemicals. The cubs stopped at the threshold. Not one crossed. Nora knelt beside them. I know. Give me a minute. The inspection team opened panels. The supervisor checked his tablet. Readings within acceptable range. Nora pointed inside the vent. There. Bearing wobble. Hear it. He listened, then shrugged. Minimal. Not for them. He checked again. Sterilizer trace is below station threshold. Before Nora could answer, the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then the alarm screamed. Ventilation fault. D7. The cubs bolted into the service hatch under the feeder wall. 5 bowls clattered after them. The supervisor shouted for security. The handlers shouted names. Station speakers started barking containment orders. Nora was already moving. Open the crawl map. An engineer grabbed her arm. Containment protocol. No unauthorized entry. Nora ripped free. I'm the only one who fits those ducts, and the only one they'll come to. The alarm tone changed. Coolant pressure drop. If the trunk line ruptured, blast doors would seal the duct path. Selen grabbed her sleeve, eyes wide. Please. Nora dropped into the hatch. The duct was narrow and hot. Metal scraped her shoulders. The alarm echoed through the walls like a bad heartbeat. Nora crawled fast, following paw marks and bowl clinks. Hey! Bowl brigade. It's me. No answer. Then, clink. Left side. She took the left branch and hit a sealed grate. Wrong path. Behind her, blast doors slammed shut. Lockdown. She backed up, breathing hard, then heard it, small crying. The smallest cub. Nora moved toward the sound. The smell got worse, hot coolant vapor, burnt insulation, sterilizer sting. At the next junction, she found them. 4 cubs huddled around the 5th beside a warm pipe, bowls scattered, eyes huge, terrified. Nora stopped. Hey! I found you. The grey-striped cub gave a shaky huff. The smallest one tried to stand and slipped. Its paw was wet with coolant spray. Above them, the damaged pipe shuddered. Nora looked up. Crack in the line. Growing. One more surge and the duct would flood with freezing vapor. No room for a full repair. No time for a better plan. She clipped her light to the grate and pulled a seal strip from her belt. New rule. Brave for 10 seconds. Back corner. They moved. Nora wedged herself under the pipe and slapped the seal strip over the crack. It hissed, peeled, slipped. Pressure too high. She needed a clamp. It was in the side pouch she couldn't reach with her arm pinned under the line. Nora twisted harder. Pain shot through her shoulder. The pipe shrieked. The smallest cub cried. "Don't you do it," Nora growled at the pipe. "I've had a long week." The grey-striped cub crawled forward. "No, stay." It nosed her side pouch, hooked a paw into the flap, and the clamp slid loose and tapped her elbow. Nora froze. The cub stared at her, wide-eyed. Nora laughed, breathless. "You little genius." She grabbed the clamp, snapped it over the seal strip, and locked it hard. The pipe shuddered. Held. The alarm dropped 1 level. Pressure stabilized. Nora sagged back, shaking. Then the smallest cub crawled into her lap and buried its face in her jumpsuit. The others piled in after it. For 1 second, in a freezing duct with alarm screaming, Nora just held them. "Okay," she whispered. "We're going home." The blast doors had sealed behind her, so Nora took the old maintenance route. She crawled first, dragging her tool bag and coaxing cubs with the other hand. "Come on. Bowls too." Behind her came 5 soft huffs and the clink-clink of metal bowls. At the final grate, she kicked twice. No response. She kicked again and yelled, "Maintenance! Open up!" Metal scraped. The grate lifted. Light flooded in. Nora crawled out into the D-deck galley covered in dust, coolant, and cub fur. Handlers rushed forward. Security rushed forward. So did Kelt. He stopped when all 5 cubs pressed closer to Nora instead of leaving her. Selen dropped to her knees. "You found them." Nora handed over the smallest cub carefully. "Coolant on the paw. Warm rinse only." The medic moved fast. Kelt looked at Nora's bruised shoulder. "You disobeyed direct protocol." Nora met his eyes. "I stabilized your line in a locked duct with 1 arm while your protocol screamed." An engineer stepped forward with a tablet. "Administrator, Technician Vance was right. Bearing failure and sterilizer leak were within station limits, but above juvenile earth feline tolerance. We missed it." Kelt looked at the cubs. Then the bowls. Then the galley full of staff listening. "Repair every line in D7. Replace all bearings. Update species-sensitive thresholds station-wide." The engineer blinked. "All thresholds." Kelt turned. "Did I stutter?" "No, Administrator." Kelt looked back at Nora. "And submit a formal proposal." Nora frowned. "For what?" He glanced at the stove where water was already heating for the cubs. "For whatever this is." 3 days later, Kepler 9 opened a new room on D-deck. Official name, Cross-Species Comfort Nutrition Pilot Program. Unofficial name, Nora's Kitchen. The room was simple and warm. Real stove. Better vents. Wide counter. Low tables. Old earth bowls polished bright. On the first morning, Nora walked in and stopped. 5 cubs were already waiting. Bowls ready. Handlers smiling. Beside them sat 3 hatchlings, 1 fuzzy moonfox juvenile, and an armored engineer holding an empty bowl. He cleared his throat. Quality control. The grey-striped cub huffed at him. Nora laughed. "Sure." She tied on an apron and lit the stove. This time the station did not go silent. It changed. People slowed outside the door. Voices lowered. Shoulders dropped. Garlic, butter, and basil drifted into the corridor, and nobody called it contamination. They treated it like a signal. Safe here. Warm here. You can breathe here. Later, Selen brought Nora an old transfer log. During a systems failure, a human engineer had been trapped with the cubs in a cold nursery module. He had no feed unit, so he heated ration mash on a portable plate, added herb packets, and talked to them until rescue came. Nora listened alone after shift. "Easy, little ones," the engineer said through static. "I know. It smells weird. But it's warm. Try 1 bite. There you go." A tiny cub sound answered him. The same soft gratitude sound Norah had heard in her quarters. When the log ended, Norah wiped her face and started kneading dough. No speech. No ceremony. Just work. Human work. The kind people forget matters until something small and scared needs it. That night, after she locked the kitchen, Norah heard it again. Silence. Not the bad kind. The listening kind. She turned. There were bowls outside the door. Not 5 this time. 12. Different sizes. Different metals. Different species. Norah stared, then laughed under her breath. You're all going to ruin my life. From somewhere down the corridor, 5 cubs answered with soft, happy chuffs. Norah smiled, unlocked the door again, and went back inside. If you enjoyed this story, hit like and subscribe for more HFY moments. This is HFY Survival Arena.